And we're live. Welcome to my little walkthrough of the actual praise quantification and how it all worked out. It's kind of a complicated thing, and I've been trying to explain it, but it's really easiest if you look at the spreadsheet. It's called TEC praise quantification. And in this spreadsheet, you'll find that it has about a little over under 1 million tabs. And this is because this spreadsheet is where every praise that was ever dished in the TEC, it went. And so we have all the way from September 7th, we have praise that was dished. And so every time praise was dished, it was quantified by a couple of people in the TEC, and every praise has an impact hour score associated with it. So back in the first few, we even called it cred, and the praise system evolved over time. At the beginning, it was just Livia and I doing it. So we had tiers, and then eventually we moved away from tiers, and we started just dishing praise and quantifying them. Also, we eventually started adding deductions, which you can see in red, and you can see that these are the negative ones. So you can go through here and you can look at the past praise right now. A lot of them are filtered in various ways. And so you might have to like check the filters and be able to unfilter like that. And if you're not familiar with spreadsheets, it's going to be difficult. But in the end, what we can see here is like in week 7, we started decentralizing who could quantify praise. And this was part of a vote that was initiated in the forums. And up until, for many weeks, almost a year, we just kept dishing praise and dishing praise. And eventually we started dishing praise, we started on just Telegram, and eventually we moved to Discord. And so you'll see this do not touch imported tab actually shows, connects Discord and Telegram handles for our community, so that we can start replacing, give people like one handle that is their handle, their like dominant handle, so we don't dish them praise to 2 different handles. We did an audit in May to kind of check out on people. There's been a lot of variety of like broken tabs and stuff like that. This is a very large working sheet. But then at the end, we also had this like we started doing adjustments directly into the sheet that the quantifiers would do. And this was to, originally the intent was that some people just didn't get praised for their work, and we wanted to make adjustments, or sometimes people were overpraised for their work, and we wanted to make adjustments without screwing up the data by making an adjustment directly into the field. But for the last one, we actually made adjustments just because people were token engineers this was because of the praise vote that we had. And that's what I'm going to spend most of my time talking about, which is like, how did we get from like a point where every praise was quantified every 2 weeks, and then it was assigned a certain number of impact hours, to the final actual thing that goes on chain that everyone will get in their wallet and will mint TEC hatch tokens for everyone. So the final tally without any interventions or anything is right here. Sorry, it's actually this final no intervention pretty is nice because it's pretty. It has nice, Marco did these designs, praise Marco, praise. So this would show you, this is how the praise stacked up without any interventions at all, except for, of course, the token engineering extra praise that was given and bonuses to token engineers in our community. And yeah, this is how it stacked up. Now you'll notice, for instance, me and Jess and Livia and who else? Like Ivy, we're pretty low, even though we're in Wonka and yeah, it's just like all of these people who are working day in, day out from the very beginning were actually more like in like not even in the top 10. This is because there's this deductions that started happening that was so that people could who were volunteering were rewarded and the people who were being paid were deducted. And yeah, really it's just so that we could put them on an even playing field, because some people chose to be volunteers and they should be rewarded for that since they're not taking in extra income. It's like, how do we balance the fact that some people are being paid to do this work and some are doing it without being paid? And so there were these deductions. And that's why I'm down here along with all the other people who are being paid, because even though we're doing a lot of work, we get these big deductions. Then there's, but in the end, the final impact hour list is here. And this is because we had a vote and it was very contentious to the point where one proposal got 52% of the vote and the other proposal got 48%. Now that's not quite true. Now, technically there were 4 proposals out there, and but the top 2 were these 2, and of the votes that were sent to those 2, which were by far way leagues ahead of the other proposals, they split it 52-48. And so because it was so contentious, the people who proposed these proposals actually made a compromise me and Jeff made Praise Mageddon and I made No Intervention, and we compromised, we made a compromise to avoid a decision creating too much polarity in the community. And 52% of the praise is going to be allocated to the people, the results with no intervention, and 48% goes to the best attempt at creating the Praise Mageddon distribution that Jeff outlined in his post. And that turns out to be here. So you'll see that it's not so much different than no intervention, except for there are some major differences at the top. It's much more evened out, and yeah, but still the people who were deducted still didn't get very much deductions, but there's definitely a different order in these things. So there was some major change from merging the 2 proposals. So yeah, I'm going to talk about how we did this merger. And really, no intervention is easy. To come up with no intervention, we didn't have to do anything. So that was really easy. We just used the process as it was being done every week, the same. But Praise Mageddon was much more it took a lot more work to actually create this. And so major praise to Vitor for staying up with me to finish it to all the way. And of course, YGG and Sam and Jeff and Livia and everyone who helped me put this together. Major praise. Actually, Sam didn't really do anything. He was just here helping me, cheer me on to finish it, to get this baby hatched. So yes, you'll notice in the Praise Mageddon that the top 4 are all the same. And that's because there were buckets in Praise Mageddon. So if you were a volunteer and you never took payment, and you were in the very top group, then you got the same. And there are actually only 4 people who were volunteers in the very top of the top group and never got paid. So they all got the same. The others, and there's also going to be a bunch of the same here in the middle group and in the low group and in the long tail. There's also a large percentage of the same. And then at the end, it goes fully there. So this is because Praise Mageddon was built with buckets. Let me show you this system. So here is the Praise Mageddon math somewhere. So praise McGinn in math was done like so. There was we did the buckets. So Olivia, Jeff, and I all went through all of our contributors and put them into 4 buckets according to the proposal: a high, medium, low, and long tail buckets. And if I remember right, we had about 30 people in the high bucket, somewhere around 50 people in the mid bucket, and then 200 people or so in the low bucket, and 200 people in the long tail bucket. Maybe it was 100 people. Honestly, I don't remember. But that's not important. What matters is there are these buckets. And then once everyone in the bucket was supposed to get the same. But then we realized there was a big difference between, there wasn't that much of a difference between being the low person in the high bucket and the high person in the mid bucket. But for impact hours, there was a huge difference. And so we decided to even that out. The original idea was actually to make a sinusoidal wave, and YGG had this all coded up, and it was super cool. But it was a little hard to implement in the final thing, so we went with just a line, and then a vertical line, and then a line, and a vertical line, or in a angled line. So you can see that here. This went from bucket percentage to smooth bucket percentage, right? And so this is so yeah, it starts out just being like this total number of impact hours, and then yeah, and then we start smoothing things out. So we started smoothing things out by M11. So yeah, oh yeah, here's the math right here. So we just start decrementing by a percent for each thing. So it just turns into a line. So at, I believe at like 8 people in the bottom of the bucket of the high bucket and 8 people at the top of the low bucket, we would just kind of like drew a straight line so that they would have an even amount. So we smoothed out the buckets, and then we ended up getting a percentage for that smooth bucketing. And by the way, the people were put into buckets, but then they're ordered by the total impact hours they got, ignoring deductions, which is a really interesting, total, which is here. And this would be like, if we ignored the fact that people were paid, we can actually see this is actually the list of people that got the most impact hours. Sem was number 1, I was number 2, Livia was number 3, Zep was number 4, then Wonka, then Jess, then Tam, then YGG, Santi, Paulo, and the list goes down from there. So, and this is like, this would have been a better leaderboard to show people of like how things are like shaping up than the deductions, because, you know, people being paid, like Zeptimus had a lot of impact hours, but that's because of this list, he was the only one in the top 10 that never received payment. And that made him look really high. When really it's just, he was volunteering, and that put him at a much higher rate. But then because of the challenge, he actually started getting payments, and social things are really interesting, right? But okay, so let's go back to the praise McGinn math. So praise McGinn math, first thing we do is we put everyone in a bucket, Livia, Jeff, and I. And then when we're there in the buckets, we ordered the buckets by the total impact hours, ignoring deductions. This is like, if ignoring the fact that people were paid, taking away all of the negative impact hour changes that were put in for people being paid, then this is their impact hour list, and that orders them in the bucket. Then we smoothed out the buckets. so that we didn't have a sharp change from the high bucket to the low bucket. Instead, at the bottom of the high bucket is people start getting a smaller amount. And then at the top of the mid bucket, it starts getting smaller and smaller too. And then it flattens out. So you kind of have this like this flat line and then angled and then flat line and then angled and then flat line. So that's like the base of Praise-Mageddon. But then we also did a deduction for the people who were paid. And to figure out how to do those deductions, we scaled them based off of the total deductions that they received. So the largest deductions that were ever given were 85%. And so we kind of, what we did was we scaled like if someone was deducted so many hours that they only got about that the total impact hours ignoring deductions was the amount that they got was only 15% of that, then they would have gotten, we scaled it so that actually they got 60% of that. So we scaled the 85% deduction to a 40% deduction. And then we scaled, of course, a 0% deduction to a 0% deduction. We found a really small, like a weird equation that was to do that. And it was basically the amount that they were deducted by the times 8/17 plus 9/17. That's what did it. It was math. We did a little bit of algebra to come up with that, but that's what works. Because it's like 85 is where the 17 comes from. And then, yeah, anyway. And then it's like 15 and 40. It doesn't matter. Either way, math is math. And we scaled the deductions so that no one had a deduction larger than 40%. And then we multiplied that percentage by their ratio, by the smooth buckets result that they had. And then we got a final percentage. And then, so then we got a percentage for each person. And then we multiplied that percentage by the total number of impact hours that were given. And that gave them their final results, which are right here and in the Praise-Mageddon Pretty. So then we took Praise-Mageddon Pretty and multiplied all of these numbers by 48%. And we took the no intervention Pretty and multiplied those numbers by 52%. And then we got the final number, which you can see here is where it was where it worked out. Yeah. Okay. So then there is one more step. That's kind of weird. So we took these numbers and we scaled it a little bit more. And so one of the things that happened in the evolution of the impact hours and actually the Hatch dashboard is that we took away impact hour slope out of the equation and we replaced it with target goal and impact hour rate at target goal. And what that did was that took impact hours out of the equation and put those two variables in it instead. We took out impact hour slope and the impact hours, total number of impact hours, and replaced it with target goal and impact hour rate at target goal. And then something weird happened. We actually sort of used the total supply held by builders as a parameter in the outputs. So when we voted, the winning proposal number 83, simple supply held by builders, said that we had to have 25% of the total supply go to the builders if we reach the min goal, 20% go to the builders if we reach the target goal, and 10% if we reach the max goal. And so those percentages are really what we voted to. And because we changed the equation and took the number of impact hours out, then we actually could only get the dashboard to show those numbers if we use the same number of impact hours that we assumed we would have in the dashboard. And it gets a little crazier because, and so we had to scale, sorry, I'll add the next part in a second. So we had to scale the total number of impact hours that we give to the actual number of impact hours that were on the dashboard so that we can still have 25%. So we ended up scaling it in two ways. There's another thing that we scaled the total number of hours to 9730. But what's interesting is we don't actually have to scale it all the way like that, because we also, some people, you have to participate in the hatch, you have to actually have activated your Trusted Seed membership before the hatch. So that you are a legal member of the association before the hatch. And we reached out to everyone who had impact hours and begged them to activate their membership. And so most people did, but the people that didn't actually got 0 impact hours in the hatch. So while we have this final list right here, not everyone actually claimed their impact hours by activating their membership. So we took those people out, and then we scaled what was left to, actually have this number of impact hours. And this was actually minted and given to everybody who activated their Trusted Seed membership. So if you go to your wallet, you'll actually see impact hour token, an impact hour -S token, IH-S token. And that's the scaled number of impact hours. But the real number of impact hours that everyone knows and cares about is here. And effectively, it'll give you the same result. It's just that we had to do some fancy math to make sure that on chain, when we reach the 800K goal, that the builders will get 25% of the supply. Okay, so sorry for that long-winded explanation, but it is what it is. It was a lot of work to put the final praise together, but we got there. One thing I didn't mention also was that leading up to, we did a giant audit to make sure that all the people who were paid were deducted, and all the people that got deductions actually were paid. And if they never collected payment, but we thought they were when we were doing the deductions, we gave them impact hours back. So all of that worked out really well. And yeah, and with that, I'll leave you. I don't know why you're watching this to learn about the details of the impact hours, but hopefully someone edited out the only interesting parts and didn't make you actually watch this whole thing, because it's a lot of math and spreadsheets. But hey, thank you guys, and talk to you soon. If I can figure out